The Sosnovy Bereg camp has never been a place to relax. His story began with a high-profile scandal. In the 70s, the owner, former Marine Raymond Crow, bought a plot by the lake to build a character-building zone for difficult teenagers. He believed that physical pain and discipline would fix anyone. The children slept in barracks with leaky roofs, trained until they vomited, and for the slightest offense they were locked in the ice room, an old warehouse with broken windows. 2 years later, the camp was closed after 14-year-old Evan Shaw died of pneumonia. Raymond claimed that the boy was to blame for running away to swim at night. But his parents found bruises on Evan's body, and the pathologist's report said multiple rib fractures. The court found Crow guilty of manslaughter. A month after the verdict, he was found in the same warehouse with a noose around his neck. Since then, the camp has changed a dozen owners. Everyone tried to erase the past. They repainted the walls, renamed the buildings, but the legends about Raymond's ghost lived on. In the 90s, a group of scouts disappeared during a night game of hide-and-seek. Search dogs led to the lake, where they found a backpack with severed fingers in a coffee can. The rest were never found. I found out about this from a forum for fans of abandonment. Thread, Sosnovy Bereg, Truth or Fiction? It was full of photographs of dilapidated buildings, rusty beds, and children's drawings on the walls. One user wrote that thrill seekers come there every summer, but many do not return. I thought it was a story. I haven't received the email yet. An envelope without a stamp was lying on the doorstep. Inside is a map of the camp marked, "You're next," and a key to the gate. I thought it was a prank by my twin brother Kyle. He loved scaring me from childhood. He put dead rats in bed, sat in the closet with scissors in his hands. But the next day, Kyle called from the hospital. He was hit by a car while running after me in the park. I went to the camp alone. To prove that I'm not afraid, the road to the camp was like walking into someone else's reality. The pines closed over the asphalt, turning the day into twilight. The navigator had lost its signal a long time ago, but I remembered the map, the turn at the crooked sign, private property. Passage is prohibited. The gate hung on one hinge, and behind it was a clearing overgrown with weeds. The first building greeted me with the smell of mold and rotting boards. The walls are covered with graffiti, "Run, he's watching, he hates noise." There was a doll with no eyes and wrapped in barbed wire in the corner. I filmed everything on camera. I promised the subscribers of the vlogs a real horror. By evening, I found the diary. He was lying under the bed in the administrative building, wrapped in black plastic. The pages were covered with shaky handwriting. July 12th. We saw him today. He stands among the trees, his face covered with a welder's mask. Jason shouted, and he threw an axe at us. We ran, but Jason, he fell. The axe was sticking out of his back. We hid in the dining room. He knocks on the door. God, he's tapping the tune from Silent Night. The last entry ended with a blob that looked like blood. I woke up at night to a creaking sound. Something was being dragged across the floor on the floor above. I took a survival knife, Kyle gave it to me for 18 years, and followed the sound. The stairs were shaking, the floorboards were sinking underfoot. At the second stage, the tracks are streaks of mud, as if someone was dragging a bag. They led to a room with a boarded-up window. There were photographs hanging there. Hundreds of pictures, teenagers around a campfire, a girl with a backpack. I recognized her t-shirt from the forum, a guy cutting steak with a knife. My stomach clenched when I saw my face. The photo was taken today. I'm at the gate, with a card in my hand. The lock clicked from behind, the door slammed shut so abruptly that I instinctively pressed myself against the wall, dropping the flashlight. The glass shattered, and a beam of light danced across the ceiling, picking out fragments of the past, ragged webs of cobwebs, patches of mold in the shape of hands. The photographs of my eyes followed my every move. I grabbed a knife and rushed to the exit, but the handle wouldn't budge. Someone had inserted an iron bar from the outside. "It's not Raymond," I whispered, trying to stifle my panic. "There are no ghosts. So there's a living person here. The one who kept the camp in a state of controlled disintegration for years. The one who left footprints for the legends." Smoke wafted through the crack under the door. At first it was sweet, like burnt rubber, then it was acrid, like burning plastic. They set the building on fire. The window was boarded up, but one board was rotten at the base. I beat on it with the knife scabbard until my palm was numb. On the third blow, the wood gave way. I had to crawl through on my stomach, scratching my ribs on nails. The fresh air burned my lungs, but I couldn't run. A branch snapped below the window. I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath. A figure in a welder's jumpsuit slowly floated around the corner. The mask reflected the flames that were already licking the roof. He was carrying a chainsaw. She ran along the side of the building, tripping over the roots. An engine roared behind him, and he heard it. My legs were weak, but adrenaline drove me forward. I remembered my diary. He hates noise. I dropped my phone out of my pocket and stepped on it. The screen cracked, but the speaker squealed with static. I threw it into the bushes. The chainsaw was silent for a second, and I ducked into the drain pipe under the dining room. The clay stuck to my hands. The pipe led to the lake, but after 10 meters the passage narrowed. I had to crawl back when I heard the screech of metal on concrete as he set a trap at the exit. I switched the flashlight to red light mode and crawled in the opposite direction. The pipe led to the basement. Rusty freezers, shelves with bottles of medicines from the 80s. On the table is a homemade mannequin in my clothes. His stomach was split open, stuffed with pine cones and bird bones. There's a note pinned to his chest. Resistance is a game. You already lost when you came back for it. A cold sweat broke out on his back. After him, Kyle? His accident in the park? Before I could collect my thoughts, a warm liquid dripped from the ceiling. She lifted the lantern, and there were bags of thick polyethylene hanging from the beams. One broke, and my hand fell on top of me. On the ring finger is an engagement ring with the inscription, RS plus MS. Are Raymond Crowe and Martha Shaw Evans' mother? A knock from above. He walks through the first floor, methodically checking the rooms. I hid behind the freezer when the hatch in the ceiling creaked open. Through the crack I saw boots, gasoline stains on the soles. He lowered the ladder and froze, listening to the silence. His hand reached for the mask. A siren wailed in the distance. Maybe the fireman? Or my hallucinations? The mask fell to the concrete floor with a dull clang. I dug my nails into the rusty side of the freezer, expecting to see the maniac's disfigured face, scars, or madness in his eyes. But he was under the mask. Kyle. My brother. His lips stretched into a familiar grin, the one with which he once showed me the dead pigeon in the school locker. Surprise, sis. He bent down, picking up the mask. There was a fresh scar on his neck from the noose. The one I gave him last Christmas as a joke. You didn't think I'd let you become popular without me, did you? His hand with the chainsaw shook, and I rushed forward, grabbing a bottle labeled phenobarbital from the shelf. She threw it in his face. The glass shattered, white powder mixed with the blood on his cheekbone. Kyle screamed, closing his eyes, and I slipped to the stairs. He grabbed my ankle when I was already on the third step. I hit the bridge of my nose with my heel and the cartilage cracked. His fingers opened, and I pulled away, flying into the hallway. A shelf collapsed behind him, and Kyle stumbled over it, blinded by chemicals. I ran towards the smell of burning. Flames were already consuming the dormitory, sparks falling on the dried grass. His head was throbbing. He had faked his death. He faked the accident. And now, why? When I reached the gate, I stopped. Kyle's backpack was hanging on a pole. Inside is my old diary, stolen from home. On the last page, there is a photo pasted in. When we were 7 years old, we cut a cake with the inscription, "Happy Birthday, Psychopaths." His handwriting is on top. You've always been afraid of being unnecessary. I'll make you a star. A shot rang out from behind. The shot penetrated the backpack, leaving a hole in the tree. Kyle was standing outside the dining room with a sawed-off shotgun in his hands. His face looked like meat after a blender. The phenobarbital had eaten into the wounds. Don't you understand? Stop it, he shouted, reloading his rifle. We will create a legend. You will die beautifully, in a fire, like a witch. And I'll be the one to find your bones. We will be immortal. I rushed to the lake. The water here was black, the shores dotted with sharp rocks. I took off my shoes. Kyle hated it when I ran barefoot. He said it was for beggars. She jumped into the water when the first shot broke the surface. I swam underwater until my lungs exploded. She surfaced at the old pier, a board with nails sticking out of the depths. I grabbed her. Kyle was already ashore. He dropped the gun and pulled out a knife, a replica of mine, given on the same birthday. Do you remember how we cut the Barbie doll? He lunged, and I jumped back, feeling the blade graze my T-shirt. You were crying, and I was laughing. You've always been weak. The board was shaking in my hands. I swung, aiming for the knee. He dodged, but the nail bit into his thigh. He screamed and fell to the sand. I stepped on his wrist, knocking out the knife. I'm not who I was when I was 7, I hissed, putting the blade to his throat. He laughed. Then kill me. Become a heroine. The hand trembled. Silhouettes floated in my eyes, 2 children in a hospital room, where he smothered me with a pillow until I stopped breathing. His mother said he didn't want to. She threw the knife into the lake. You don't deserve to be a legend. I ran towards the burning camp while Kyle was yelling something about cowardice. In the office, through the smoke, I found what I was looking for, an old cable from the generator. She wrapped it around the gate handle, tying the other end to Kyle's truck. He was limping towards the lake when I started the engine. The gas hit the floor, the cable stretched, the gate collapsed, crushing his legs. His scream mixed with the roar of the fire. I didn't turn around. I walked along the road until the sirens became louder than the screams in my head. He faked the accident to make me feel guilty. Everything is for the sake of this performance. For the sake of control. For the sake of a spectacular ending to his twisted game. Beyond the gates, the camp was engulfed in flames. A wall of fire cut off the way to the car. I turned into the woods, stumbling, losing my shoes, scratching my face on branches. The saw screamed again, behind me. He knew the route. He knew my reactions. He knew me too well. I only stopped at the old boat station. A dilapidated building loomed over the lake. Inside are the remains of kayaks, charred oars, ropes. The suffocating smell of rot. She locked herself in, lay low. It was quiet outside. It's too quiet. I got up to look out the window, and then the planks of the wall flew apart. He burst in like a storm, the mask back on his face. Saw stalled, empty tank? Or a pause to give me hope? Kyle dropped it, straightened up, and, as if in a theater, spread his arms. Here she is. The last scene. We're back together. I grabbed an oar and hit him on the shoulder. He staggered, but didn't back down. He grabbed my jacket and threw me to the floor. The air was knocked out of my lungs. He sat on top of me, pinning my arms, his face almost close to mine. You've forgotten me. I replaced them with likes, friends, and videos. But I knew you'd come back one day. To become a part of history. Our history. I could smell phenobarbital, blood, and burning. His breathing. Weeping. Your own, and others. It's not love, Kyle, I breathed. It's a mania. He froze. He blinked. For a second, it was as if he had returned to himself. But it was enough. I hit him headfirst with my forehead in the nose. A flash of pain, a scream. He rolled backwards. I jumped up, grabbed a rope from the floor and wrapped it around his neck. Not delaying, just distracting. Then she pushed him through the open window of the boathouse. He fell into the water. The muddy lake churned. I waited, my heart pounding. He didn't come up. 10 seconds have passed. 20. 30. There were no bubbles. I went out, my legs were shaking. The flames lit up the sky behind him. The campsite burned to the ground. His past is mine, too. An hour later, I reached the road. I caught a hitchhiker, an elderly trucker who didn't ask questions. He just handed me a bottle of water and said, "You have the look, like people who've been through something. Hold on, girl." I didn't tell him. Not to him, not to the police. Not even to my subscribers. The camera burned down. There was no proof. Only a burn on his arm and a scar on his cheek. And a picture on my phone from the cloud, me, at the camp gate, with a map. The only reminder. But sometimes, when I fall asleep, I hear in my head, "Surprise, little sister." And I know he's still there. Somewhere in the forest, under the ashes and pines. He's waiting. I couldn't believe my eyes. These words, written in uneven handwriting on a piece of paper, seemed simple, but there was a sense of panic in them. There is desperation in every curve of the letters. I took the paper between 2 fingers, as if it might burn me, and slowly knelt down on the dusty concrete. Next to it is a flattened jar, an empty pack of cigarettes and a smell. Something rancid, almost sweet. The smell of neglect and loneliness. The apartment I found myself in looked long abandoned, but not abandoned. There was still someone's life here, but it was as if it had been suddenly interrupted. Broken. There's a cup of dried coffee on the windowsill, a plate of mildewed leftovers in the sink, and newspapers scattered on the floor. I ran my fingers over the cover of one of them. It was a recent year. This is not an archive. Someone lived here quite recently. I noticed another detail on the table by the window, an old dictaphone. The cassette. I haven't seen anything like this in 10 years. It was turned off, but there was a tape nearby. I inserted it and pressed play. The first thing I heard was breathing. It was long, heavy, and strained, as if the man was trying to catch his breath after a long run. Then a voice. I do not know who will listen to this. Maybe no one. But if someone did find it, please, just leave. Don't repeat my mistake. Don't try to understand. Pause. Nothing for a couple of seconds, just a faint rustle of film. I thought it was just an oddity. That the neighbors, well, there are people who are introverted, taciturn. We're all like that now. I thought I imagined it. But then everything became too real. Those sounds at night. The creaks. Not footsteps, but something else. It was as if the furniture was moving on its own. The walls seemed to breathe. The voice on the recording side. I felt a chill creep up my spine. I started following them. For the neighbors. I wrote it down, took notes. They knew. I saw one of them just standing at the door of my apartment one day. He didn't knock. He just stood there. And waited. About 10 minutes. Then he left. I pressed pause. My heart was pounding. I got up and went to the window. The courtyard was empty. Perfectly empty. Not a single person, not a single sound. There was only the faint hum of the wind and the swaying clotheslines. Everything seemed frozen. I clicked play again. The last thing I recorded, the voice continued, was a woman's voice. I could hear her singing. Without words. A melody, soft and hollow, as if through concrete. I went to the wall and started writing. Here. There was a noise. It was as if someone had turned on the radio between the waves. Then there are fragments of sounds, and, indeed, something similar to singing. It's long. Without emotion. It's like a lullaby that makes you feel worse, not calmer. I turned off the recorder and left it in place. And suddenly I realized that I was no longer alone in the apartment. I didn't hear the door open. I didn't hear any footsteps. But the air in the room had changed. There was a sense of presence. It was as if someone was standing behind him, but there was no breathing, no sound. I turned around abruptly, but there was no one there. Empty. But there was a light on in the hallway now. And I was sure that I had turned it off when I entered. I didn't call out. I didn't ask, who's here? These phrases sound silly in real life. You just freeze. The body is waiting, the brain is catching up. I walked slowly to the doorway. I looked in. The coat hanging by the entrance swayed as if someone had just walked past it. There are footprints underfoot. Fresh ones. Someone walked barefoot across the dusty floor. The tracks led deeper into the apartment, to where there was a corridor and closed rooms. I could have left. Right now. Turn around, get out, forget. But something held on. Curiosity? Fear? Or what I understood, if I leave, I won't be able to forget. I won't be able to sleep. It will rot in my head like someone else's life that I accidentally touched. I followed the tracks. They led to the farthest room, where previously, according to the apartment plan, there should have been a bedroom. The door is ajar. Through the crack, darkness. There was no light, no movement. I nudged her with my shoulder. A creak. There was a smell of dust and something familiar. The room was empty. But on the wall opposite the door, someone had scratched a phrase with their nails. I saw everything. But they pretend that I don't exist. Under the wall is an old mattress covered with a blanket. And there's another piece of paper next to it. The handwriting is different, uneven, fast, as if it was written in a hurry. There was. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. They copy the behavior. They're adjusting. They're watching. You'll know which one of them is different if you stay here longer than a day. But then it will be too late. I abruptly left the room. He returned to the kitchen. He sat down at the table. I needed to think about it. Everything that was happening did not fit in my head. Not a single supernatural detail, everything is absolutely real. Simply. It's scary. Terrifyingly real. And I started to remember, that man in the hallway last night. Neighbor. He said hello, but he didn't blink once. He stood in the same position the whole time he was talking. The voice was normal. But there were no nuances in it. No accent, no tone, no fatigue. It was as if he was speaking according to a template. I stood up abruptly. I needed to get out of here. Immediately. But when I got to the door, I realized that the lock was different. Not the one I opened this morning. It was equipped with an internal rotary key.